Entrepreneurs, this one is going to be a fun episode to record because Cesar and I have been working behind the scenes, and now it is time to finally get him recorded. Cesar, thank you for taking the time to join that entrepreneur show.
I'm so excited to be here, man. This is great.
Thank you for everyone tuning in as well. If it's your first time with us, this is the podcast that interviews founders of top companies and brands from all around the world. And this week, we are sitting down with Cesar. He started out at the age of 19 as a stand-up comedian and actor featured on Comedy Central and Hollywood films. But after more than a decade of laughs, he realized he wanted to connect on a deeper level with his audience, and that is how him and I met. He found that nothing gave him greater joy than helping others get to the stage of their dreams. Now, as a presentation coach, he helps people deliver their message on global stages, at work, or big events. You can watch all of three of his TED Talks at the link in bio. It will be there for you. And since we have someone on the show today who is involved in comedy, now he's on his entrepreneurial journey with his own company. We are going to dive into a Forbes write-up titled "What Stand-Up Comedy Can Teach You About Entrepreneurship," and then get Cesar's take on it. But I'm about ready to kick this off, Cesar. I briefly touched on that you were tired of giving only laughs. You wanted to do your own thing, but dive into that journey a little deeper for our audience to find out why you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, first, I guess, I'll say I feel like I always had that kind of spirit. Like I always wanted to have my own money, like growing up as a kid, I remember really like early being like 12, 13 years old, going like, man, I wish I didn't have to ask my parents for money. And my first job was actually as a paper boy. I would deliver papers. And of course, my dad had to do it with me, but it was my idea. So I'll take some credit for this my first entrepreneurial venture. And my dad was super supportive. And like we would get up at 4 a.m, roll newspapers and drive around the neighborhood delivering newspapers, man. And to this day, like I cannot believe my dad did that. And I can't believe that I actually woke up at that hour to make it happen. I had a goal in mind. I was like, I wanted a dirt bike and I wanted to, earn enough money to be able to buy my own dirt bike. And when I got to that kind of goal, then it was just like, all right, man, this 4 a.m. stuff has got to go. But, I think I carried that spirit into everything that I wanted to do. From that point on, I was always looking for ways in which I could create it myself. Even as a comedian, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you are your own business. And so we don't often think about it that way. And actually most creative folks aren't good at that side of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a lot of talented, funny people out there or whatever creative endeavor they have that don't really, have a clue how to kind of piece it together and how to make it work. And that's why often sometimes not the most talented people will rise to the top. Now, I do think that like if you're super talented, it probably will happen for you. But like this is a skill set that we all have to learn. So, my journey after being a comedian, essentially, I started teaching humor to people because people were asking about that, and I'm like a teacher and a coach at heart. So I started teaching a course at the college, and that turned into a community class, which turned into an event that we would put on. So basically, you would take my class, and then at the end of it, you would perform your original 5-minute set. Well, it was sold out for 3 years straight. So my classes were all booked, and then the events would sell out, and it just turned into this thing that I'd never anticipated. From there, I was already doing some speaking, like trying to transition into that world. And I had my first kind of idea for my TED Talk that came from this experience of teaching humor, teaching stand-up comedy to people. And from there, that's really what launched my speaking career and then my coaching business.
I love it. Having that hustle, that drive at such a young age, waking up at 4 a.m. I know I'm not in common ground as I'm someone who wakes up at those odd hours every day, but I'm sure it did teach you a lot, like discipline, dedicating yourself to your passion, your craft, which you mentioned now, your speaking business. What are some of your favorite parts about hosting this speaking business, bringing on clients?
Yeah, so essentially what I do now is, the primary work that I do is I help people land TED Talks and deliver great TED Talks, right? And that's the bulk of it. I also am a speechwriter, and we also help people turn their books into keynote speeches. And so these are kind of the services that we offer. Uh, for me, like, it's just been one of those things where I think if you keep tinkering with it, you can find like a nearly perfect alignment with who you are and what you have to give that also becomes your business. And I think for me right now, like, I'm as happy as I've ever been and feel like in the most alignment that I've ever been with anything that I've ever done before. So, and that's a really cool thing to like say out loud and know and just kind of live in. And I think that that's that's the that's the thing that I would want, other people to know, like when they ask about like, oh, how did this coaching business start, and whatever. A lot of it is just like trial and error, and you got to do stuff and you got to find out. But I think if you find yourself in a spot where you're like just running the business and you're not like still like, you know, loving the people that you work with, like if you can't make it about the people, like for me, it's not really like a thing. It's not really worth it. That's telling you that it's not actually in alignment. But always in a business, you're going to need to find things, especially if you're like a creative like me, you're going to need to find new projects and new things that keep you invigorated throughout. And that's one of the things that I love about what we've built is like the ideas are constant. Like, a client will come in and bring something in and I'll be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I never would have thought of that. I can't wait to help you create this thing.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, man, that's where I'm at with it.
Thank you for talking more about your business, the things you like a lot about it. But as a lot of the great things that happen in entrepreneurship, it's not all roses. There are a lot of challenging areas on our operations. The Jeff Bezos, the Elon Musks, those are the 1 in a million entrepreneurs who shed this fake glamour, I guess you could say, about the real entrepreneurship journey. If you could help our audience battling that same adversity, what can you offer?
I would distill it down to this. Like one of the most challenging parts is knowing when you need support, and when you just need to do the work. And that everybody's willing to kind of sell you something, right? To help solve your problem. And what you need to do is figure out what it is that where like you live in your zone, right? And you're thriving, and that's going to keep you inspired in your business. And then the things that you can outsource and delegate, like identify those things, and and then make a plan to make that happen. Because what eventually will happen for a lot of entrepreneurs is they do it all, right? They'll just say, okay, I'm going to do it. Or you have the opposite where it's like, I'm going to spend a bunch of money,
Mhm.
and I still am not making money, or like it didn't solve the problem that I thought that it would. And so know that you have to be the visionary for your own business and take responsibility for that part of it. And then do the work where it's like, okay, I'm good at this and I love it, and live in that.
Mhm.
And then if you can outsource the other things, depending on how much cash flow you have for operation costs and all that good stuff, then prioritize doing that. And that's how you're going to run a clean business.
I love it. In the beginning, for me, especially, I didn't want to spend a ton of money. I learned and did everything myself. But now, as you get bigger, you have to bring on professionals in the other fields, similar to how Cesar and I are working together here today. But thank you
That's
for
right.
sharing that. Everyone out there, you are not alone. It is not easy on this entrepreneurial journey. Be sure to stick around to the end of the show to find out exactly how to get in touch with Cesar. Reach out to him. He is a great resource to have. But Cesar, before we hop into that spotlight story, what is one app, book, any resource you've used to help you find success? What can you offer?
Yeah, I've read several. I think, I'll just, instead of like picking like one that I'm in love with, because I don't know if I could do like that. I'll just say one that I'm reading right now is called Profit First. And it kind of taps into what I was talking about, which is, how do you know how much money you have to do what with? And it starts with this problem of like, you know, the behaviors that we essentially have are like looking at the bank account and going like, okay, I have this much money in there. I feel like I can buy some stuff right now. And like that's what we do as a behavior, right? So the point like that this book makes is, instead of trying to like undo that natural behavior, why don't you just create a system that allows you to do that? And so what it suggests is like creating separate bank accounts for separate things. And then, every, I don't know, every month or however you want to set it up, you have like an automatic transfer of funds to these accounts. And you know exactly how much money you have for what purposes in your business, because you can go to that account and just look at it. And I thought that was like, it not only is it simple, but it's also really brilliant in that it just works with our natural behavior.
Who's the author on this book?
So this is Mike Kolowitz, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's called Profit First. And yeah, I would say, because I'm not like a natural numbers guy. I'm not, like I dread doing taxes. So that's still something I'm looking to outsource in my business. And I haven't quite gotten there with like, the taxes piece of it. I'm still like at the end of I'm there like in March trying to put stuff together and like, oh, I don't have the receipt. What do I do? But yeah, man, I would say that's like a really nice tool to have to be able to visualize what's going on in your business.
Thank you for sharing that, everyone. Be sure to hop on Amazon, check out that book. They might have the audio, the Kindle, anything that works well for you. But before we find out which entrepreneur Cesar would sit down with throughout history, we're going to hop into that spotlight story, get some more value from Cesar today. Please scroll down in the episode description to follow along with the show article. It is titled, "What Stand-Up Comedy Can Teach You About Entrepreneurship." Then we'll bring back on our guest of honor today. The article starts like this: entrepreneurs and stand-up comedians have a lot in common. Ever feel like you are constantly in the spotlight? You came here to say something, and now everyone is watching. Your customers, team, family, and friends. Similar to comics, entrepreneurs also draw inspiration from the most unexpected areas of life. The article's writer said earlier this year he launched a YouTube video series and wanted to get better at cracking jokes on camera. So he signed up for a Tuesday night stand-up comedy class. Little did he know they would turn out to mirror his entire career as an entrepreneur. He said, every skill and talent I've nurtured throughout the years came out to play with me on stage, and every fear or doubt I've had yet to face showed up in my performance. He says, master your audience and you'll master the show. While talking to entrepreneurs about knowing their audience makes me feel like preaching to a crowd. Stand-up comedy put this idea to a whole different light. When a comedian comes to stage, he notes a few people in the audience, looks to them in the eye, and delivers to them. You need to pay attention, see who's in the room, hit their spots, and speak directly to them. In business, there will be naysayers. Be unapologetic in your service in what you came here to say. If you believe in what you are selling, keep going. He also highlights practice. Less is more. Find flow, and taking yourself too seriously can be your deadliest mistake. Where I'll expand on that. Let's face it, not every joke will land well, just as not every decision will be a right one. But there is no need to blush and run away crying, excuse me. Laugh a little. If you have a chance to laugh at yourself, do it a lot. In business, when managing a team, collaborating with partners or colleagues, or when all goes to hell, learn to make fun of the circumstance and situation. I love that. Cesar, what are some of your takeaways you can add here from your experience in comedy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the article. I think it's fun. It's always fun to make parallels to things and create metaphors, and that's how we learn, right? Story is how we learn. I think, one of the things that pops out for me about this is, and we could talk about this for days, is audience. And yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think, it's interesting though, because a comedian isn't going to always know who they're performing for. And you might get hired for a gig and that there are like, I don't know, a bunch of real estate agents or something, and you can throw at them all your real estate jokes. But most nights it's a mixed bag. And you still got to bring it, even if they're not your ideal audience. I guess what I would say, like in terms of like how I think about that in business, there's a couple of different schools of thought when it comes to comedy, and I think it translates, and I'll get there in just a second. So as a comic, you go, all right, do I want to be the comedian that can go out and like crush every night in front of any audience, and I can appeal to anyone? Like maybe that's like probably like Seinfeld, or probably like who's another one that probably can do that? I don't know, probably Bill Burr, and I mean, Ellen is, when she was doing stand-up, I mean, it was just so like endearing, right? Everybody could relate to it. Or do I want to be the comic that I'm sort of an acquired taste, but my audience really loves me, and they come find me wherever I'm performing. They seek me out because I'm so like fine-tuned to what's going on there. And I think the same is like actually true in business. You could be either one. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a focus on being, super niche. And because especially when you start, like if you can speak to a really, specific niche, then you're talking to them, and that's how you can differentiate yourself, which I do agree with is a benefit. I guess what I want to say though is there's another layer to this, which is like, which we don't often talk about, which is who's going to make you happy to work with. Like, for example, as a comedian, I don't want to be in business with any other comedians ever. Like they're not fun to work with, you know what I mean? Like I would never pick other comedians as a niche, even though like I know them very well. I could tell you like what they want, what they don't want, like in general, like I could speak to that and could probably create a business out of it, but I would be miserable working with other comedians. And so the other layer to this is what's going to make you happy day to day with your clients. If you're a coach or like you're working one-on-one with people, like you have to do that, right? And so what I've found is that the way that you attract people is by being as much, yourself as you possibly can, and not trying to attract certain people, because if you're trying, then you're not just doing you. And that's the whole thing that's wrong, I think, with most like branding things that are out there, is they're telling you to pick and then attract a niche without saying first, who do you want to work with? Like, who are you? Mm-hmm. Because you can't find who you want to work with without being you. So that's my take, man.
I love that. And I was laughing at the part where you said, we're not fun to work with. It's not fun to work with the other comics. I appreciate the insight there and all the value you just brought to our audience. I'm glad it resonated with you a bit. But before I let you go, Cesar, pick that entrepreneur that you would choose to pick their brain, whether they're dead or alive.
I guess I would say, I'm a Shark Tank fan. And so, maybe this is a commonplace people go to with this question, but I'm a fan of Kevin O'Leary. He actually makes me laugh the most. And, like, I don't agree with him on most things actually, but it's that kind of thing that I would want to sort of learn from, because if it's not like me, I also want to see, what I'm missing. And I just think it'd be cool to pick his brain and shoot the breeze.
All right. I always delve deeper too. Where is this meeting going down? If you could pick that too.
Well, he's buying, of course. So I think it'd probably have to be, someplace that I would never go. Let's say it's I want to go to his place. He's got boats. I want to hang out on one of his boats and not fish. Just kind of sit out there and eat fish.
I love it. I love it. Well, thanks so much, Cesar, for taking the time to join me and join our community of entrepreneurs. Everyone, you can go in the show description to find out his website, but where else can we find you, Cesar?
Yeah, so I have a really active Facebook group as well. That's a good spot. Like if you're looking to do a TED Talk and you just want community and free resources around it, it's an amazing place to get all of those things. And it's just Facebook groups and then /speak TEDx. And you'll find us in there. And I look forward to seeing folks join us.
All right. Thank you for sharing, everyone. We are at Vincent A. Lanci and at That Entrepreneur Show on all social media. And YouTube is at Vincent A. Lanci, where you can catch some video previews to this episode today. Be sure to scroll down in that episode description. You'll find Cesar's information, as he is this summer's show sponsor. So go to that website. I'll also make sure I paste this Facebook group in this show description for you. But here we are signing off today. Cesar, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thank you.